Good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone watching at home and abroad. Welcome to Charting with Dan. I'm your host, Dan Murrell. We'll be talking about the latest at the weekend in the box office, including a strong performance by Ford versus Ferrari, one of the blockbuster Oscar contenders that are out there. We're going to be talking about Charlie's Angels, Joe.
Ooh.
Joe Starr joining me today. Lon Harris couldn't be here today, so I did what I always do, which is just throw a rock in the office and whoever it hits.
And I caught it.
And Joe caught it. It's like the bouquet at a wedding.
Yep.
Thank you, Joe. Good to have you
Or
with
like
me.
that old short story, The Lottery, that you had to read in high school.
Yes.
But like better.
I hope so. Joe, you get to join me for all of that talk, worldwide talk, domestic talk, and of course the meowdown. And there's a big, there's big cats news. Besides the meowdown, we have huge cats news on the horizon, and you're here for it. Oof. So we're going to talk about that too. But first, let's get all this other stuff out of the way. You know, the show part, and look at the weekend box office for this past weekend domestically. As I mentioned, Ford versus Ferrari did really well in its opening weekend. $31.4 million. Opening up into the Thanksgiving weekend, which starts next week into the holidays. It's a good start for that movie. It's the third best opening for James Mangold, who directed the film. And here's the really good news for Ford versus Ferrari. In addition to opening well, it actually got the rare A+ cinema score.
Ooh.
So audiences that went to see it gave it an A+. That sets the stage for great word of mouth, particularly this week as we're building up to the Thanksgiving holiday. We have one more weekend to go, and then we get into the big, heavy movie-going season of the holidays for Ford vs. Ferrari to stake out an early spot and then to have great word of mouth. It's good. We talked a while ago about the fact that this was not a cheap film to make, so they needed to do well in their investment, and it looks like they've gotten off to a good start, and we'll see how they do.
It almost feels retro in a way, that just a movie that was not cheap to make, that is driven by stars and maybe kind of a flashy story that is not called Captain America or Batman.
It is. It's a throwback to the fact that 30 years ago it was not uncommon for, even 20 years ago, for a big Oscar contender to be a multi-million-dollar studio film. That's sort of fallen out of favor the last 15 years. So yeah, this is kind of a throwback to the sort of big studio pitch that they used to make for the Oscars. It seems to be connecting with audiences thus far.
Yeah, this will probably just continue to crank for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it may. I mean, you never know. You can never tell what people are going to do. However, not a lot of the ones that have been set up for big performances have done that in the last few weeks. We've talked about that. We're going to talk about another one. We've got Frozen 2 coming out this weekend, which of course is going to do massive business, but there's not a whole lot of crossover. So I don't know if it's going to really cannibalize, other than parents taking their kids maybe to see Frozen 2.
Yeah.
I don't know how much business it'll cannibalize from Ford versus Ferrari, but we'll check out the numbers next weekend on that. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, Joe. Midway was the #1 film last weekend, kind of a surprise. It dropped 52% in its second week. It falls to second place. Usually a movie this big, if it were doing this, there would be more red flags. However, for a Roland Emmerich movie it was made for $60 million, which is like pocket change.
Yeah,
for
that's a small Emmerich movie.
That's a small Emmerich movie. So it's doing okay for the size that it is. It's not a box office disaster. If it had been a $150 million film or $200 million film, we'd be having a different conversation.
Yeah.
But because they made it fairly economically, it's doing fine for its size.
Do you have numbers on purely just how this is doing with dads?
I'm guessing through the roof.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to even ask. I think dads love it. I think it's the dad pick of the week.
I would be I hope that's an official thing that you do.
Dad pick of the week.
I'm trying to keep note, because as you go through, I'm like, I have homework for you for next week's show on different movies that I'm curious to find out about.
I will poll 100 dads, and the top 3 answers will be on the board next week. Joe, there's a movie that we're going to talk about a lot later on in the show, but Charlie's Angels was almost the bigger headline this week than Ford versus Ferrari opening well due to its lower opening. Lon and I discussed last week the fact that this did not seem to be on pace for a big opening. It was not. It was actually lower than expected. Just $8.3 million. As a matter of fact, it just barely. It was almost a tie. Edged out the second week of Playing with Fire. It was made for around $50 or $60 million, but it opened much lower domestically. This does not look like it's going to be the breakthrough hit that Sony and certainly Elizabeth Banks, who wrote and directed and co-stars in the film, wanted. There's more to this story that we're going to talk about later. So let's put a pin in Charlie's Angels. We'll loop back to that. And then rounding out the top 5, we got Playing with Fire. That had the best hold of any film in the top 10, hitting that family market. That only dropped about 35%. That comes into 4th place. Then Last Christmas dropped less than 50%. It drops to 5th place. Of note, Dr. Sleep dropped 57%, exits the top 5 after 1 week.
Tragic.
I'm so sad. I really like that movie. And then Terminator Dark Fate drops out of the top 10 in its 3rd week of release.
Also
So hasta
tragic.
la vista to Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah, just no love for Terminator, no love for a good Stephen King adaptation, no love for sappy Christmas stuff this year. I don't feel good for the chances of...
Well, we've got many more chances for sappy Christmas stuff. This was just the first one, and as I mentioned, I was putting we were still eating Halloween candy when that movie came. Come on.
That's fair. That's a little
Give me
early.
a break.
That's a little... Michael's already has the Christmas trees out, and it's October 15th. Yeah.
I have people across the street from me that have had, since like October 25th, have had a Christmas wreath up. It's like, come on.
Did they go see Last Christmas?
I would almost guarantee you they did. Let's look at the top per theater average for the weekend. Waves, which is a film from A24, posted the top per theater average in just 4 theaters. This is the latest film from Trey Edward Schultz, who's a writer-director. His last movie was It Comes at Night in 2017. That was a buzzy summer movie with the horror fans, one of those kind of like The Witch and Hereditary that perhaps wasn't helped by the marketing campaign as like this super scary horror film, much more of an atmosphere of dread. That wins per screen. It's actually, reviews have been very strong. It's sort of been sneakily maybe establishing itself as a sleeper awards candidate. I am going to try to go see it, I believe this weekend or later this week because I've heard good things about it, but I have not yet seen it. Heard good things.
What does a movie with a release like that have to... Sorry, I always feel like I'm killing your momentum with numbers questions. What does a movie like that, top per theater, but a small amount of theaters, what kind of success metric does a movie like that have to make to actually expand to, okay, now it gets this size of a run, this size of a run?
I mean, there's a certain extent to which A24 will have already planned it out in the sense of like it starts in 4 and it's probably booked for maybe 16 or 20 next week. But it also kind of relies on what kind of buzz is it getting.
Right.
As we're starting to get, believe it or not, nominations are going to start coming out in a couple weeks for awards and stuff. So if it's picking up momentum there, then A24 will start distribution. It'll spread it out more and more. A lot of these, it's kind of like a Broadway show where you get an opening night, and then depending on how you do, maybe you run for 20 more shows, or maybe you run for 5 years. It just depends on how audiences are responding. And then this time of year, particularly, it depends a lot on awards buzz. Has it gotten any nominations?
Okay.
So I think it's a mix of A24 sort of already planning out a little bit what they're going to do, but also waiting to see what's going to happen.
A little bit of a wish of a dream.
Yeah, it's like you'll notice a lot of times the day after the Tony Awards or after the Tony nominations, a lot of shows on Broadway close because they're waiting to see what happens, and if nothing happens, or if they don't win, or if they're not nominated, they're done. So it's kind of the same thing. Let's look at the top 5 worldwide. Same number 1 movie. Different name, though. Le Mans 66 is the same movie as Ford versus Ferrari. However, in many overseas markets, including a lot of places in Europe, it's not called Ford versus Ferrari. It's called Le Mans 66 because the Le Mans race is much more notable and well-known.
We had an SJU fan question a week or two ago we just didn't get to that was asking why do they change movies, depending on location. And in our case, in the States, no one would go see Le Mans 66. No one knows what it means.
Nobody knows what it is.
Affinity for it. Just like in Europe, they might not go see a movie called NASCAR. Like they might change it to something else just because the affinity's not there. For us, Ford but Ford, the American car maker,
Ferrari,
taking on
we know
Ferrari.
that.
Okay,
yeah. I think it's just because NASCAR is certainly.
We also love movies with V in them.
Batman v Superman, Ford v Ferrari. Yeah. Well, I mean, NASCAR here in the U.S. is a very popular thing, but auto racing beyond that is never been a huge thing, especially not the size that it was in the 60s in Europe. I mean, and it still is much bigger stock car racing stuff in Europe than it is here. So,
but the idea of there's a lot wrapped up in the name Ford v Ferrari. There's that American roll up your sleeves, let's build a car and show those Europeans what for. There's a lot wrapped up in that for a domestic audience.
It's ironic because Christian Bale, European.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
But as I didn't even talk about how much money he made. I was too stuck up on the title. Le Mans 66 / Ford v Ferrari worldwide opened to $52.8 million over the weekend. It's open in a lot of its markets, so we'll see how it continues to do. Charlie's Angels $27.6 million, so it made a little bit more money overseas. It comes in second place. However, it has opened in a lot of its major markets, including China. So no Chinese opening on the horizon for Charlie's Angels. It's already open there, but it still has a lot of other markets coming in the coming weeks. And then Joker, the other big news that we have to talk about, it stayed at number 3. It's been at number 3 now for 2 or 3 weeks. Another $18.3 million. But way more important than any of that is that it passed a massive milestone over the past week. As we mentioned on last week's show, it has become the 44th member of the $1 billion club. Joker has passed $1 billion at the worldwide box office. It also now, if we're looking at the top DC comics grosses worldwide, has surpassed The Dark Knight. It is now the 3rd highest grossing DC Comics film worldwide, behind Aquaman and The Dark Knight Rises, ahead of Batman v Superman, knocks Wonder Woman to a 6th place. Joker is also the first R-rated film to gross $1 billion. It is the lowest budgeted film to pass that landmark. So a lot of firsts, a lot of history being made with Joker there.
I mean, it definitely is coming up on Dark Knight Rises as well, if it keeps up any kind of momentum.
Those grosses for Aquaman and Dark Knight Rises are not out of the question. I mean, we've got another $130 million for Aquaman. That might be a little bit of a tougher order.
Yeah, that's a big seat across.
That's a big seat across. But $70 million for Dark Knight Rises, that's doable. It's going to need a surge. It's definitely going to need a surge. But this movie just keeps going. I mean, I thought that it would take a lot longer to get over $1 billion. I didn't foresee, and it's not just domestic. It's worldwide. I mean, this is $1 billion. About 330 of that is domestic, and the rest of it comes from around the world. So this is not just a case, as we've seen with some other movies. Black Panther was one of them, where it did well, absolutely worldwide, but the domestic gross was the engine that drove that car. This is a worldwide hit. It's hit a lot of different areas of interest and age and you name it. So you look at those graphics. It's going to take some work to hit that number 1 spot and topple Aquaman, but at the same time, this has been just kept chugging along and chugging along and chugging along week to week to week. So it's not unquestionable that it would do that.
Look, even if it just passes Rises, I'm sorry, I'm not gunning for Dark Knight Rises, but I do like the idea of Aquaman and then Joker, like 2 DC movies that could not be more different.
No,
being there,
drum playing octopus and the biggest DC movie you can imagine. And the smallest DC movie you can imagine.
The smallest. He doesn't dance down the steps and then jump onto a shark.
Yeah. Anytime somebody says that there's a formula for how to do movies and make $1 billion, no, there's not.
Well, the interesting thing to me, too, is the overseas market, because I feel like studios have a tendency to go, we want to sell to China, we want to sell to the Asian market. Like, it's got to be big, it's got to be flashy.
This defied every rule.
Yeah.
Did not play in China, never opened in China, not flashy, not accessible in the sense of it's an R-rated film, it's tough, it's gritty, but it defied every rule for what a $1 billion movie is. It really has redefined what you can do, and I hope what this means is that studios will be more adventurous in the films that they greenlight, but it probably just means they'll make more Joker movies.
More Joker, yeah. Joker 2, Joker 3 is definitely what this means.
Buttoning up the top 5 worldwide, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil stays at number 4. It approaches $500 million worldwide, and then Last Christmas rounds out the top 5. It opened in the UK this past weekend. That's where the movie's set, so a little bit of a bump, and it's actually going to have a more of a gradual rollout globally as we get closer to the Christmas holiday. So worldwide, obviously a great start for Ford versus Ferrari, but the big news being Joker breaking that $1 billion barrier. Of course, Warner Brothers very happy about that. Todd Phillips very happy about that. Joaquin Phoenix happy about that, but his work is just beginning because we are in the teeth of award season, and I keep seeing through different critics associations and stuff, they are all being just run through the ringer right now because you got to press the flesh. You got to answer the Q's and A's and everything. Yeah. So
no sleep till Brooklyn.
No sleep till Oscar night. I don't think for Joaquin Phoenix.
No.
So Joe, the other film that we wanted to talk about was Charlie's Angels, which, as I mentioned, particularly domestically, did not have a good performance this weekend, and that would be notable in and of itself. But there was some talk over the weekend because there's some comments from Elizabeth Banks that but that were made in an interview she did with the Sun Herald before the film's release, that were sort of retroactively applied to the film's opening, and a lot of people, as you can imagine, had some thoughts about it. So first we want to look at what she said, and then look at some numbers and just sort of try to draw some conclusions. This is not some agenda-driven hit piece or anything. Like, this is legitimately one time where I think somebody made some comments that we can actually throw some numbers at and try to draw some conclusions. So first of all, let's look at the comments that Elizabeth Banks made that sort of started circulating this weekend. She was talking to the Herald Sun, an interview that was published on the 11th. She said, look, people have to buy tickets to this movie too. This movie has to make money. If this movie doesn't make money, it reinforces a stereotype in Hollywood that men don't go see women do action movies. So a lot of people interpreted that comment as sort of saying that if people don't go see Charlie's Angels, that they're sexist. I'm not going to go that far, but it certainly did sort of frame the film in the sense of, if people don't show up to this film, it does say something about movies and who goes to see them. So, of course, the first two that a lot of people, myself included, immediately pointed to were Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, two female-led superhero films, both of which had fantastic, not just opening weekends, but box office performances. And let's take a look at the demographic breakdowns on those two. And they're a little bit different. As you can see, Wonder Woman, which opened in 2017 in the summer, opening weekend demographics. Now, this is a fairly new thing, tracking demographics on opening weekend. Post-track, which is through ComScore, just started doing this a few years ago, so we don't have a wealth of information, but we do have it for both of these films. Wonder Woman opening weekend, 55% female, 45% male. Captain Marvel, 61% male turnout, 39% female. So a little bit different in the sense that you did have a majority female crowd showing up for Wonder Woman in 2017. Not overwhelming, but 55-45 split. And then you actually had a bigger split of male audience members for Captain Marvel than female when that film
hugely
opened.
Surprising to me.
Right?
Based on everything that has ever been shouted about that movie, and that I genuinely did not expect that breakdown.
The strength of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I guess. But you know, and just the interest in general superhero films. But that particular, I think with Wonder Woman. Well, okay. So these were she went on to say this because I think perhaps either the reporter smartly or Elizabeth Banks also smartly saw this line of questioning coming, and she directly addressed comic book films directly later in that same interview, and she said, quote, they'll go see a comic book movie, we'll go see a comic book movie with Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel because that's a male genre. So even though those movies are about women, they put them in the context of feeding the larger comic book world. This then went on to say that, like, yes, they star a woman, but you're setting up Justice League, you're setting up 3 or 4 different other films. So I think looking at the data just for those two films, and she mentioned those two films directly, I think you could make that argument for Captain Marvel. I think if you looked at that number, you could say, like, it's 61% male. It was between Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. It is set up. You're introducing that character. Maybe you think that there's a need that you have to go see that movie. I'm not saying that's the case, but I think you can make that argument looking at those numbers for Captain Marvel. I'm not so sure about Wonder Woman. If you look at those numbers, first of all, it was 55-45 female. Secondly, it was a movie that performed substantially better than the film that it led into, which was Justice League. It did not introduce the character. The character was introduced in a previous film. It was a prequel. It didn't carry on the storyline. It was something before. So I don't necessarily think that's the best example when making that particular argument. I would not make that case with Wonder Woman.
I think there are some individual situations for Wonder Woman that may not be it. I think Wonder Woman, similar to Black Panther, had that groundswell where it was like it had that hype of this is the first one. You know, this is the first. I mean, aside from Supergirl, or Barbed Wire, or Tank Girl. Sorry, it's the fourth. It's the fifth. But this was like gonna be the first big major
inside in the universe of this new wave.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of excitement for that. Women making a point to go out in groups and go see Wonder Woman, and so I do think there are some different situations that make Wonder Woman stand apart a little bit.
Yeah, so. Special cases, and she also she addressed those directly. So I actually wanted to research this. As I mentioned, there's not a wealth of data, but there's a few years worth from these exit pollings that PostTrack does. And I wanted to look at what is the demographic split for audiences on opening weekend for movies that are action films or adventure films with female leads. Is there a stereotype? And is it, necessarily true that men won't go see an action film if there's a female in the lead role? And this is what I found. So these are all through PostTrack as reported by Deadline. As you can see, Charlie's Angels had a 66% female audiences. Females on the left in the blue. I know that's confusing. I don't know why I did that way. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Females on the left in the blue, males on the right in orange. Atomic Blonde, though, a Charlize Theron, action film, female lead. There's actually a 51-49 male split there. Terminator Dark Fate. And again, these aren't hit movies. I just want to look at who came to see them. Not all of them are hit movies. Terminator Dark Fate did not do well, but was a 58-42 male split going to see it. Alita Battle Angel, very popular film, 59-41 male split. Miss Bala, which was a very action-heavy film with a female lead, 51-49 male split. Ghost in the Shell, a sci-fi adventure action film with Scarlett Johansson, 62-38 male split. Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander, 56-44 male split. Mockingjay Part 2, and actually the Hunger Games in general, those did skew female. So if you're looking for an adventure series that's skewed female, Hunger Games was one that traditionally did skew about 60-40 female. So that was the case there. That did have traditionally a more of a female audience than a male audience.
Those to me are like the pink blue division in a toy section at a Target. Like I feel like Hunger Games is that marketed as that goes in the pink side.
And then Star Wars, those last three films are Star Wars films. Star Wars they put females with Rey and then Felicity Jones and Jyn Erso with Rogue One at the forefront of their new films. Obviously not Solo, but Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi, all pretty much staying steady. 66-34 identical splits for Rogue One and The Last Jedi, male to female. 64-36 for Force Awakens, male to female. So in the case of all but a couple action adventure films, female leads, obviously not as many female directors, which is an issue that Elizabeth Banks is very passionate about and should be, quite honestly. But as far as leads, I think that Elizabeth Banks may be right that there is a stereotype that men won't go see women in action films, but I think the stereotype is wrong for a different reason, because the data doesn't really bear that out. For what we have. For a lot of the movies that we have data for, even Atomic Blonde, movies like this, the data actually bears out that men will go see a female in an action movie lead at about the same proportion that they'll go see an action movie with a male lead. Now, there's always some variability in that data, but I think really it's much more about how are they marketed to. For movies like Ghost in the Shell and Terminator Dark Fate, Tomb Raider, these are movies that put females with Scarlett Johansson and obviously Linda Hamilton and Mackenzie. I'm bad at names too. Davis. I've completely Mackenzie Davis and Alicia Vikander. They were front and center. Obviously, they're the stars of the film. There did not seem to be percentage-wise a larger female attendance surge for those films. You didn't see those percentages flip from some of the more traditional action films. I think you have to take a few things into consideration. Number one being that this was a promotional campaign for this movie that heavily targeted a female audience. You had the music video that got like 115 million views on YouTube, featured three young female artists. Not that that's necessarily just for females, but it is sort of aimed at a female demographic, particularly a young female demographic. You look at the promotional tie-ins that the movie had. You look at the messaging that was put forth about the movie. I think that it's not a surprise that Charlie's Angels drew a heavier female audience, because I think they courted that audience a little more. So I think there was a success on that end, and that I think they courted a female audience that maybe not in the numbers that they would have preferred, but that showed up. If you read I was reading some reporting from Deadline. Deadline reported that following the film's production cycle, some issues with scripting, that they trimmed the promotional budget in half from 100 million to 50 million. Obviously, that is going to drive down turnout because awareness for your movie is much lower than it would be if you dumped literally twice as much money into marketing and promotion. It's been over 15 years since the last Charlie's Angels movie. It's been 38 years since the series was on the air. Yeah. A lot of people pointed to the McG films and said, well, see, it can work. Well, yeah, but those were a long time ago.
That was very,
and they were sold differently.
They were sold differently, and I think because that was an argument I saw a lot online, sort of in response to what she had to say. And I think a lot of what she had to say is valid, but especially when comparing it to the success of the first two, that is a pre-MCU world. That is that's a very different movie landscape where you would look at, oh yeah, that looks fun, but yeah, let's go. Whereas I really think thinking today is a little, obviously it's not black and white, night and day, but I think today it's a little more like, I'll go see Avengers. Yeah. We've talked about this a lot before. It's more expensive. The studios seem a little more like powerful IP reliant.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, like you said, enough time has gone by, and I think when you pair Charlie's Angels with Terminator's at least to me, as like that should be a really strong franchise. With I'm more tied to Terminator than I am Charlie's Angels, and I think a lot of people, men and women, probably are.
Yeah,
did not do well either.
No.
Is it a case of? I think it could be a combination of things, but I definitely think something big that goes with it is some of these IPs are just tuckered out, man.
Yeah,
They're just tired.
And from a personal perspective, if you look at from a critical perspective. If you look at how many reviews this movie has on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got half as many reviews as a lot of films of a similar size, of a similar release structure, literally half. Almost half of those reviews were posted on opening day or after on the film. I can say it's not that I will only go see a movie if I get a screening invite to review. However, I did not get one for this movie, and that's not me saying I was left out. It's me saying I did not get an opportunity to see this film before it opened. That closes my window to go see it and do a review. From if they screen it earlier in the week, a screening invite, I could do my review. If they screen it on Tuesday, I've got Wednesday, I've got Thursday, I can post it. If I'm not able to see it, if I don't go see it Thursday night, then just from a programming perspective, it's almost like, am I going to go post it today? The movie's already open. It was not screened as heavily as a lot of movies, and I'm sure perhaps the studio might dispute that. But I just have to. I think you could just look at the evidence and the fact that like nearly half the reviews are opening day or after. I don't know a lot of
the embargo was.
The embargo was the Tuesday before it came out. That also puts a bit of a damper on when the word gets out about a film.
That's also not a clever trick anymore. Like I think people have associated that now with the review's coming out late.
I'm not saying they didn't screen it for critics, but they did not aggressively screen it for critics. So there wasn't a lot of advance word, whether that was by design or by choice or cost-cutting measure. My main thing being like I think we're talking about two separate issues here, which is the performance of this movie and then what Elizabeth Banks is talking about, which is that I think it is 100% absolutely true that female voices need to be raised up. They need to be more in the forefront in Hollywood. Movies need to be made for every different audiences. But I think in this particular case with this movie, it's not so much a case of men not wanting to go see a movie with female leads as a movie that was targeted very heavily towards a female audience, that maybe didn't have the marketing resources it needed, that wasn't screened aggressively for critics, and thus reviews were out late, just didn't draw the number. And by the way, it got a B+ cinema score, which for an action comedy type of this is kind of a mediocre result. A B+ for a horror movie, you want that. B+ for a movie like this, you don't want that necessarily. So I think it's just audiences honestly showing disinterest in this particular movie, somewhat lukewarm reviewed movie, an aging franchise. The cast, while talented, not huge marquee names. Kristen Stewart, probably the biggest name out of that cast. And even still, she's been doing fantastic work, by the way, but in a lot of smaller films over the last several years.
But is the personal shopper crowd going to come out for Charlie's Angels?
And you've got Naomi Scott, who was, of course, Aladdin was a huge hit, but she was one part of that film. So I hesitate to put too much as far as like which audiences want to see which types of films based on the success of this movie. I think this movie's performance is just sometimes a movie doesn't work. Elizabeth Banks has said, she posts on Twitter, she's proud of the film. She's sort of embraced the fact. She's like, if you're gonna have a flop, at least have your name on it 4 times. So she's proud of the movie. And
I think there's there's always that fear, right, that how quickly are studios going to get gun shy about a certain demographic, how many opportunities they're going to give that demographic to fail, which I think is a valid concern. Just given like the a smaller amount of opportunities handed out in terms of just making these films in general. So again, and that's a playing field that needs to get leveled out as well. Because I do see in this particular case, I don't think that the numbers supported it, but the comic book genre is dominating right now. It's almost like a weird bullet point to the Scorsese conversation, which I definitely don't want to drag you into out of the blue right now. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of that idea that it's like, it's the amusement park, and then everyone else is sort of getting subsectioned out. Yeah.
Now, where I will agree with Elizabeth Banks is that there is a danger of studio executives not looking at any of these factors that I just talked about and saying, like, dudes don't go see a woman movie.
Hey, what?
We don't make them. I think that's the fear, is like, you do have to actually analyze the numbers and say, so it's really like, I don't think anyone should paint this with an overly broad brush. I wouldn't take these results and paint the audience with too broad of a brush, but I also, if I was a studio, not take these results and say, like, well, this means this is the kind of film that people want to see. Hopefully there's some nuance. I feel like I'm just the crazy person in the world that shouts nuance at everything, and it just gets lost in the din.
Well, no, I think it's important. There's a lot of interesting things at play here, right? I think the music video, I think that deserves to be looked at and talked about.
115 million or more.
But what does it translate into? Right?
Obviously not big box office.
Should a studio have rested its laurels on, like, well, we had a great viral video, like that's got to turn into momentum? Does it? I don't know. Or is it like, you see an Instagrammer that's super famous and millions of likes and interactions the moment they do a hashtag ad? Nothing.
Yeah.
Is it the same as that?
No one knows what they're doing. Everyone just likes to pretend they are. That's that's the dirty secret of Hollywood.
100%.
Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. No one. Oh, I'm fired. Okay, let's look at the 2019 domestic list before we get to the meowdown.
The best sentence.
No change as far as ordering. Joker keeps creeping up on Aladdin. We'll see if it can get there. But the top 5 remain the same. However, there's a big 800-pound gorilla coming into the ring this Friday. Frozen 2 is going to come in here and wreck some shop. Oh, yeah. Look out, Rock. Elsa's coming for you, brother. That's not even the Rock's era. So no changes there, but that's going to change soon. Let's look at the 2019 worldwide. Again, no changes thus far before Frozen gets here. But as you can see, we've added an extra digit to that Joker gross. It's now crossed $1 billion. We now have seven $1 billion movies released in 2019. Joker is the 4th comic book based film to gross $1 billion this year, following Endgame, Spider-Man, and Captain Marvel. And you got the Disney's Toy Story, Lion King, and Aladdin. The Disney's also apply to some of those, but Warner Brothers holding down the fort there. Hobbs and Shaw, Ninja, The Wandering Earth, all there, just waiting to see what's going to happen with Frozen. Joe, I'm glad you could join me.
Is it time?
It's time now for my favorite part of the show, and hopefully yours. Of course, I'm talking about the meowdown to Cats. We're 33 days away, Joe.
Yes.
33 days away from the release of Cats, but there is big Cats news,
that's like
Joe.
That's 11 cats worth of lives,
That's
Dan.
11 cats or something. I don't know math. 9 times 11 is 99.
What? I don't know.
That's a third of 11, which don't even ask me about that. 3.4 doesn't matter. Joe, there's big Cats news, which is that this is from the official Cats Twitter account. There's a new trailer coming out for Cats tomorrow. So for everyone watching at home, you get to put your Meowdown Meet a Cat knowledge to work tomorrow. What clues can we glean? What jellicle cats will we see? We're going to find out tomorrow, and we are going to do. Maybe we'll do it on this show. I think maybe on this show, because this is very Cats themed, and I don't want to. I don't want to throw Masked Singer and Cats at our SJU audience. Maybe next week on this show we'll pull some screen caps and we'll do Spot a Cat, and along with Meet a Cat, and see what new cats we've spotted that we've talked about here on the show. Maybe it'll be the cat we're talking about today. Do you want to meet a new cat, Joe?
Do you really want to meet a new cat?
We have a new cat to meet today. A very happy cat. Very happy kitty. Skimbleshanks. Skimbleshanks is that is the Skimbleshanks there. The theater version on the right, the movie version on the left. Very mysterious movie version. We don't know yet. Looks like he's wearing Roger Rabbit outfit. Skimbleshanks is a ginger tabby. He's known as the railway cat. Skimbleshanks, he works on a train. Works on a train called the Night Mail that runs from London to Scotland.
Goodness.
He takes pride in his work on this train, none more so than in his own song, Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat, in which he traditionally dons a waistcoat and a pocket watch to extol his many talents as he literally keeps the trains running on time.
Skimbleshanks is doing it.
Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat. Now, we've had pirate cats, we've had actor cats, we've had potential cat prostitutes. Now we have a cat train conductor / footman. Cats are everywhere, Joe.
Yeah, I'm so ready to keep this on the rails. I like the choice to take away his shirt for the movie.
Right. Well, he has a wardrobe. He has a wardrobe change in the show, so this could be pre-number where he is yet to don the dickie or the shirt or whatever it is that he's wearing.
Okay, got it.
I will say this Skimbleshanks looks a little more rough and tumble than the.
He's a scrapper.
Yeah, which seems antithetical to Skimbleshanks' nature, as I understand it, which is very little. So we'll see. Perhaps more will be revealed about Skimbleshanks tomorrow in the new trailer. In various productions, traditionally he's seen to be close to Jenny Anydots, who's one of our earlier cats. Old Deuteronomy, who's one of our earlier cats. He has a part to play with Grisabella. He will be played in the film by Stephen McRae, who is a Royal Ballet alumnus, along with Francesca Howard, who you weren't here, so you may not remember, will be playing Victoria.
Oh, I'd never forget something like that. Yeah.
So Skimbleshanks' own number in the show. How will he move over to the movie, Joe? We're not going to know. We're not going to know until the movie opens in 33 days. However,
will they give him his number?
We may get a sneak. Maybe the trailer tomorrow will include part of the number Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat.
A low minor
rendition of Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat that goes behind the entire show. Because they already did the flashy one.
This one's got to be sad and moody.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Joe, we're almost less than a month away from the opening of Cats. I hope you've enjoyed your introduction to Skimbleshanks. Perhaps, again, we'll all meet Skimbleshanks. The new trailer tomorrow.
I'm on this train.
I'm getting up at 12:01 a.m. I'm going to sit until the trailer drops tomorrow.
We need to give at least as much time to Cats as we do to Star Wars.
I mean, I'm trying. I'm doing my best on this show. I've talked about Cats 10 times more on this show than I've talked about Star Wars.
I have not held up my end of the deal here. I've fallen behind on SJU scheduling, and we'll cat it back up.
Yeah, I think we should put together. I'm gonna volunteer our post-production department. Once we're done meeting Cats, I think we should assemble all of them into one video that we can then release as its own. It's already underway.
Thank God.
So I can announce here that once we've introduced all the cats, and I'm assuming it'll be the Monday leading up into release of the film.
Oh, yeah.
We will be releasing a video with all of our Meet a Cat segments so that all of your cat introductory questions can be answered as you watch my various co-hosts get more and more confused.
Dan.
Yes, sir.
Let me throw something at you.
Okay.
Cat draft?
Before or after the movie?
I think it'd have to be after.
It'd have to be after.
Yeah, it'd have
Cat Draft 2020.
It'd have to be part of the Caftermath.
Yes, the Caftermath. That's going to be after the Meowdown. We're going to Caftermath. Yeah, Cat Draft 2020. I'm on board. Will you be on board with what's coming out this week? Let's see. 21 Bridges. Chadwick Boseman coming out. See if you like that. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Tom Hanks, Mr. Rogers movie. There'll be a review of that movie here on Fandom Entertainment later this week. Frozen 2, obviously the big movie coming out this week. There will also be a review of that this week right here at Fandom Entertainment. And then in limited release, a movie with Mark Ruffalo, directed by Todd Haynes, called Dark Waters. Mark Ruffalo, Todd Haynes, Dark Waters.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
It looks really good, though.
I've seen it. I enjoyed it. It's about a legal battle against the DuPont chemical company. It's kind of a civil lawsuit. I like a good legal
I like a good legal procedural. That's why I love The Judge.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wait, with Robert Duvall and Robert Downey Jr.?
One of the best. You're never going to invite me back.
We're gonna break this down off camera. Yeah, let's just end the show so Joe and I can talk about that. Thank you for watching. We'll be back here next week to talk about Frozen 2, how much it blew the ice storms. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter.
It's gonna make so much money.
It's gonna make a lot of money. Joe Starr, thank you for joining us. Joining me. Anything you want to plug?
Look, I'm just pumped about this Meowdown.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to be a part of it. Thank you very much. Cats in 33 days.
We're almost to the final Meowdown. Thank you for watching the show. Meow, meow. We'll see you. Meow, 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 meow. We'll see you next week. Bye.